Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, Lit in Lifestyle. Today I'm bringing to you a book review about a series. The series is not complete yet. It's called the Pandava series. Right now there are 3 books published. There are going to be 5. That's the plan right now in the series. The 4th one comes out in a couple of weeks at the beginning of April 2021. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about this series. I've really enjoyed it in case you want to read it. That's my cat. This review is going to be pretty jam-packed with information because it is a middle grade series. And so I read it obviously as an adult and I enjoyed it. However, I am a teacher and I am a mother, and I realize that other people might want to purchase this series for loved ones in their life, whether it's their kids, family members, or their students, and might want more information about the series before they purchase it. And so the first part, I'm just going to give like a base of the series, what it's all about, and then I will let you guys know when I'm going more into the spoilers. And if at that time you feel like you're interested in reading the series and you don't want to know about certain things that happen, then I'll let you know so you can turn off the video. So like I've said, this series is a middle grade fantasy. The author's name is Roshani Chokshi, and it is about a girl named Shah. Who would have thought? So according to the back of the book though, right on the back, it says that this series is kind of like a mix between Percy Jackson and Sailor Moon, which makes a lot of sense. Each book definitely has this adventure storyline, save the end of the world type of quest going on. And like the Percy Jackson series deals with Greek mythology, this series deals with Hindu mythology. I think that the Sailor Moon aspect of the series comes from the fact that the adventurers kind of create this sisterhood, and they're like in it together, and it's a group of girls. So that's kind of where you get this like Sailor Moon, girls saving the world type theme. So I want you to let me know in the comments if you've read this series and really liked it. What parts of it did you like, and what parts of it did you not like? I am really curious to see what you guys think. Before I talk about some specific things that happen in the storyline, I want to talk about a few reasons why I really like the series. The first is probably the most obvious. It deals with Hindu mythology, which I think is really unique. I think it's not uncommon to hear a lot about different Greek mythology growing up. However, I personally have never heard very much about Hindu mythology. And so the fact that this series focuses on that and focuses on an Indian girl is unique and I think really cool. It can really open up a lot of kids and students to the world of Hindu mythology, which I think that Hindu mythology is also very complex, but despite this, the author is able to create these fun and engaging storylines utilizing the elements of the mythology. And even though it is complex, it's really easy to understand for readers as they go along through the stories. My cat. I also want to point out that there are glossaries in the back of the book. So I actually didn't know this after reading the first book. But there is a glossary, and this would have been really helpful as I was reading it because I'm not familiar with Hindu mythology, and there were definitely some aspects in the book that I would have liked to know more about. It didn't take away from reading the book, but it would have been helpful as I was reading it. I did notice though that in the second book, she does a better job of explaining those characters and those people in the book that deal with Hindu mythology. She explains them out a little bit more, which was definitely nice. I didn't have to think so much or question so much in the second book. I also really like the wittiness of the characters. There are a lot of times where things are said or even thought in Aru's mind that are just sarcastic and kind of, quick-witted. For example, in the third book, there was a time on their quest where they run into this water goddess. Her name is Yamuna, and Minnie, one of the other characters, really doesn't like germs and doesn't want to drink from the water because she just thinks, oh, there's bacteria, there's pollution, it's gross. She doesn't want to drink from it. And so there's this time, I have this quote that I'll share with you specifically right after that. And she says, Yamuna says, "The pollution that accumulates upon my surface has no bearing on my soul." Aru nodded to herself. Nice one. Maybe she'd use that excuse next time she didn't feel like showering. And I just thought that was really funny. That's just one of many times that Aru kind of says something that you're just like, you're funny, Aru, Shah, you're funny. It kind of shows how Aru is, you know, funny and is always, she's just quick-witted. And it makes reading the story a good time. Another thing that I really thought was funny and relatable about this book series is that the author does a really amazing job of putting a ton of references to pop culture within the storyline. So, for example, in the second book, they come across this crab, and the crab is specifically the brother of Sebastian from The Little Mermaid, and that kind of drives him crazy because he's not at all musical like his brother. So everybody kind of expects him to want to sing and dance, and he never wants to. So he's kind of a grumpy old crab. And he also makes a comment about Tamatoa from Moana. So there are references to Moana, references to The Little Mermaid. At the end of the third book, when we're dealing with the villain starts to say, "I am inevitable." And Aru kind of cuts him off and says, "Are you really about to quote Thanos? Like, really, you know, be original here?" And so those types of little things, I think, also help reluctant readers to be more involved with the story because they're able to understand it and relate to it more. Another example is that one of the chapters from book 2 is called Keeping Up with the Pandavas, which is obviously a reference to Keeping Up with the Kardashians. That's the only time it ever mentions the Kardashians, but it's kind of funny. I will say, though, that because of this use of pop culture, I really wonder, and maybe you can leave your thoughts in the comments as well, but I really wonder if it's going to affect the popularity of the books in the future because there are so many references to pop culture in 20 years, obviously these references aren't going to be very funny or maybe even well known. So are they going to cause the book to not be as funny? I'm kind of curious of what your thoughts are on that. Because I don't know, you know, a lot of times we read books from 50 years ago and the books are still pretty timeless. And I've never read a book that has so many pop culture references like this. And so I'm wondering if it's going to affect the timelessness of the book. Another thing that I really like about the writing of this specific author is that she is able to take things that we wouldn't necessarily really think about and use an analogy or a metaphor to make the feeling, whether it's physical or emotional, like totally understandable. A lot of times she's talking and we're listening to kind of like Aru's thoughts, and one time specifically, she walked into an area and she could feel that there was magic there. She could like sense the magic. And the author compares it to going on an inner tube ride and going under a waterfall and having that like immediate feeling of just being drenched in something. And I just found it really interesting the way that the author was able to use this imagery to really bring the book to life. And it was an aspect of the author's writing that I really enjoyed. I plan on reading some more of her books to see if the same kinds of things that I have liked in her writing in this series are present in her other stories as well. So I'll get back to you guys on that sometime when I read those books. But it made reading this series a lot of fun and really cool. And just I was able to really visualize and feel the things that the characters were going through. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about like the basis of the story, where the story starts. This is still not going to have any spoilers in it. This is all going to kind of be in the synopsis of the book. So where does the story start and how does it kind of carry on throughout the next couple of books? Okay, so our first book is Shah and the End of Time. obviously we meet our main character in this book. Everything kind of gets set up, the world that she lives in, who she is as a character, and some of the most important people of her life. It starts off with her. She's a middle schooler. She lives with her mom. It's just her and her mom, and they live in this building where her mom takes care of the museum. That's like on the bottom level, and they live on the top level. Now, Aru doesn't really have a lot of self-confidence. She doesn't really fit in very well anywhere. She like has friends at school, but she just doesn't have like a best friend or anybody that she really trusts or that, you know, feel like kind of has her back. Because of that, what she does is she exaggerates a lot of the things that she does in her life or feels in her life so that she feels better about herself and looks better to her peers. So basically she lies a lot. And this is what kind of causes her downhill spiral into her having to save the world. In the museum, there are some of her friends from school, and she's trying to impress them. So she starts talking about there's this lamp in the museum, and if you light it, it's cursed and it will let out this curse. And she's really trying to like build herself up, like she knows all this stuff about the museum, and she wants to be cool and light this lamp. Well, she does, and unfortunately it is cursed. And lighting the lamp lets out our evil villain, who's known as the Sleeper. And so when this happens, everything in the museum is frozen in time. The friends that are there with her, her mom, who's rushing down to get her to stop, completely frozen. And she realizes that she just made a huge mistake. And now she has to find these people called the Pandava brothers. They're reincarnated demigods. And they need to help her to basically save the world and put the world back together. And so that's kind of where our story starts. And in each one of the books, she's still trying to fight off this evil villain, and she goes through quests in order to basically save the world each time. So that is all I'm going to say about the first book and the series before I get into the spoilers, because that's really all you need to know, I feel like. So it looks cool. The cover is great. The next book after this is Aru, Shah, and the Song of Death. And I'm going to talk more about this book and the book after, Aru, Shah, and the Tree of Wishes, right now. But if you're interested in reading this series, I would stop watching the video now so that you don't get any spoilers, because I'm about to drop some spoilers. So now's your chance. Stop watching the video. Stop watching the video. Okay, so if you're still here with me, I assume that 1, you've either already read the series, 2, you're a teacher or a parent or a family member who is considering purchasing this series for someone in your life. Maybe you just don't care and you're like, I'll read the series even if I hear the spoilers. Whatever floats your boat. But here we go, okay? I'm gonna get into the spoilers. So the first thing I wanna talk about is the characters, because I think that the characters have a lot of potential to connect with kids. In this first book, we obviously meet Aru, our first character. I've already said that she exaggerates, she lies, she doesn't do well with fitting in. That is her pretty basic character traits. What I didn't mention, that is a big spoiler, is that as she's going to look for these reincarnated Pandava brothers, she finds out that she is one of the reincarnated Pandava brothers. And when the brothers came back to life through new bodies, it turns out that they're now sisters. And so she is one of the people who needs to save the world, and that's how the story continues. She's a Pandava sister. That is what it is. Another thing that I mentioned but didn't really go into depth on is that she lives alone with her mom. Specifically, one of the cool things about all of the characters in these books is that they all have some sort of difficult family life situation, and they're all very different. So it's like pretty much any type of family, home life, difficulty that a child could have is somehow shown in these books, which I think is pretty cool. But for Aru, it's just her and her mom. She like has thoughts about her dad, but doesn't really talk about him as much. It does mention that she has tried to talk about her dad with her mom several times, and her mom is just kind of unwilling to talk about him, and she doesn't really know why. She's never met him. She doesn't even know what his name is. It's just this weird situation, and it's just been her and her mom. Her mom does travel a lot to find artifacts for the museum where they live, and so Aru is home alone a lot. Which is kind of sad for her. The big plot twist, though, in this first book is that this evil villain, the sleeper that she has let out of the lamp, turns out to be her biological father. Woo! Like, mind blown. Didn't see that one coming. And so this obviously causes a lot of issues emotionally for Aru. She went from like not knowing anything about her father, not really caring, to finding out that she is like trying to follow him and kill him because he's the evil villain in the story. And unfortunately, she finds out this information like as she's about to take him out, and this causes her to pause and is like, what? And then he like escapes. And so that's the end of book 1. It leaves her with a whole bunch of questions about who she is, who her father is, what is this, like, why is he bad? Just did he ever love her? And even she even starts to internalize like, wow, her father is such a bad person. Does this mean she's going to be a bad person? Like, is she going to be inherently bad because her father is bad? And so that is really heavy, I think, for a young girl to deal with, not knowing her father and then finding all of this out about her father and the kind of person that he is, and then her kind of questioning herself is kind of a lot, quite frankly. The other person that we meet in book 1 is, her name is Minnie, and she is similar to Aru in certain ways, but also very different. She turns out to be the next Pandava sister, and her and Aru kind of fight together in this first book. The thing with Minnie is she seems to have like a pretty stable life. She lives with her mom and her dad and her brother. And her family is very aware of the whole reincarnation situation, which apparently Aru's mom was as well, but didn't mention anything to Aru about it. The difference, though, for Minnie is that her family thought that her brother was going to be the reincarnated Pandava brother. So when it came time for them to go on this quest, turns out it's Minnie. So her brother had been like readying himself for this quest, and then it wasn't even him. This kind of, is a lot for Minnie to accept because she is a planner. She does not like to deal with things on the whim. She likes to have her first aid kit. She likes to make sure she's got food. She likes to make sure she's doing everything that she needs to do in order to be ready for certain things. So this is definitely a new kind of lifestyle for her to live on the whim, and it makes her a little bit nervous. But she is like Aru in the sense that she also has kind of struggled to fit in certain places. And so when she finds Aru, although it takes them a little bit of time to get used to one another, they end up really loving each other and feeling like a family and like sisters, really. And then it gets to this point where then they're afraid to lose that. They're afraid to lose the feeling of having someone on their side, someone who has their back, and feeling like they belong somewhere, like in the other world, and, as Pandavas, heroes in a sense. So a different kind of family situation, but, it also kind of similar in the sense that they need someone and they find each other. Okay, so the second book is called Aru, Shah, and the Song of Death. Unfortunately, I got a sticker. If you know how to get this nasty stuff off, I mean, I could try Goo-Gone, but I wasn't sure if that was gonna hurt it. But if you have any tips on getting this sticker, let me know, because I don't like it there, but I can't get it off. Anyway, so in this book, we meet 2 more adventurers. So we have Aru and Minnie, and then 2 more adventurers come with us. And they also have difficult kind of family situations going on. The first is Bryn. She is our third Pandava sister that we meet. And at first they actually think she's her enemy, but it turns out she's not. And they actually don't really get along. So Bryn really struggles to work well with other people at first. She was pretty much abandoned by her mom, and she lives her life trying to prove herself to her mom and to herself that she's worthy of love from her mom. And really, you know, she kind of learns to just love and accept herself. But she's being raised by her two uncles, and she is the strongest of the group. She is also like not fully human, and the part of her that is not fully human is known to be like an untrustworthy species, and so she kind of deals with that as well. Just not people not trusting her, but also her not trusting people because of her mother's abandonment. But she literally like wears her trophies on her wrist as bracelets so that you know, if there ever comes a chance to like prove to her mom that she's great, they're there, that she's awesome. So but she's very strong. She's always there to kind of do like the heavy lifting of the group, and she's able to morph her body into different animals, which comes in handy a lot for them. The second person that we meet in this series, his name is Aiden, and he's actually a student at the same school as Aru, and Aru has seen him, and she thinks that he's very handsome. But she talks about him, but she talks to him and like just totally messes up her words because she just clearly doesn't have very much experience with dealing with her emotions towards boys, and you know, especially a boy who she finds handsome. But his name is Aiden. He too struggles with some things between his parents. His mom was actually in Apsara. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but she was an Apsara, which is like a beautiful creature of the other world. And she decided to marry Aiden's father, who was immortal. And because of that, she lost her Apsara abilities, and she was no longer able to go to the other world. And then they had Aiden. So Aiden feels kind of guilty that his mother gave up her life for her family, especially now that his father has a new girlfriend and his parents are getting divorced. So he's really dealing with the divorce of his parents, but also this guilt that his mother is unhappy because she gave up this life for him. And ultimately, he really just wants his mother to love herself and feel like his mother loves his life, which is also pretty heavy for a kid to deal with. Aiden, though, is really good with dealing with the emotions of his friends. He's able to see when one of his friends is hurting and is able to support them in kind of a quiet way, which I think is a really special trait for him. And they all really love him. Even though he's not technically one of the reincarnated Pandava brothers, he is definitely part of the group. Him and Bryn have a friendship, have had a friendship before this quest that they're on, which causes Aru to be kind of jealous, but she doesn't even really know why. So there are these like hints that, you know, she has feelings for him, but I don't even honestly think she really understands that she has those feelings for him. I will say that this second book has been one of my favorites so far. It literally is action-packed from the first chapter to the last chapter. Like the whole time they're on this quest and fighting, which was pretty fun. It made me be able to read it pretty fast. I will say though that our villain, the Sleeper, is not really in this book as much, which seems fine as you're reading the second book. You don't really miss him, honestly, in my opinion, but you're instead kind of set up to start thinking that the gods in the council in the other world are maybe not as great as everybody thinks they are. That's kind of where Aru's thoughts are going, that she's starting to kind of question these people who are supposed to be all high and almighty, and maybe they're not really that great. And she's, on top of not really knowing about the relationship she has with her dad, she's starting to question, like, is she even fighting for the right person? She definitely knows she doesn't want to fight for the other people, the sleeper, the bad guys, but she's also thinking maybe these good guys aren't really, maybe they're also bad guys, basically. That's kind of what they learn through this storyline with the villain that they are fighting. Really, it's just a person who feels like her story is not told the way that it's supposed to be told, and that it's kind of like the God's fault why it's told that way, and she doesn't want to be remembered as the person that they're portraying her to be. So it's really pretty interesting. There is a time, though, where she does see some reflections and memories of her father, and like some memories that her mother had and that her father had, and she realizes that there was a point in time in life where her father really loved her, and quite honestly was doing whatever he could to not become evil. He knew that there was a chance he was going to become evil, and he was trying not to, so that he could be in Aru's life. He really loved Aru, and she saw little glimpses of those memories, which is something that digs deeper into her thoughts of, who was my father? Why is he evil now? And you know, what does this mean for me and who I am as a person? So like a little glimpse of the sleeper, but not very much at all. And the last book we have is called Shah and the Tree of Wishes. I will say that as I was reading this book, I read it a little bit slower. The first part was just a little bit slower to me in general. I don't think it was the book's fault, though. At this point in time in the year, I had already read like 16 or 17 books, and I think I was just like losing my motivation for reading a little bit. And so it was a little bit harder for me to get through, and I don't really super remember a lot that happened, like specifically. I will say, though, that they're introduced to 3 more adventurers, I call them. The first 2 are twins, and they are the 4th and 5th reincarnated Pandava sisters. They are younger than our first 3, and they also have a very difficult relationship with their parents. They are currently in foster care because their parents were basically deported, and so there is like a memory of their parents being taken away from them, and it's very heart-wrenching, and it causes the twins to struggle with trust and trusting other people, but also be very protective of each other, and it's hard for them. The 3rd person that we're introduced to is a Naga prince, and his name is Rudy. Not a reincarnation of the Pandava brothers, obviously, but he is actually the cousin of Aiden. And at first you're kind of like, he's just tagging along. You don't really see any specific powers that he has, besides the fact that he is a prince. And so he does feel like he can use his royalty to kind of help them get through different security clearances, basically, to steal things that they need to steal in order to complete their quest. For him, though, it turns out he's colorblind, which is significant because he's not able to, his parents don't think that he's able to make these special crystals that they make as Naga people. And, but he is actually able to make them, I think, through hearing. Instead of like sight, he uses his other senses to basically make these magical crystals. And this power does come into play as they are fighting the sleeper. The sleeper comes back into this book. And so as they're fighting the sleeper, he is able to use his crystals to kind of help the group in times of need. And so he too is kind of someone who needs a place to feel like he is worthy and to learn how to love himself, and this group is for him. I also really liked this third book because the storyline of the sleeper was really talked about a lot more. Specifically, you get to see some of his memories that he gave up in order to try to save himself from becoming bad. So Aru really learns a lot about him and his life before her, and the relationship that him and his mother had, and who he was as a person before he was the sleeper. And that just continues to kind of dig deep into her soul as to, like, is he really a bad person? Like, obviously what he's doing is bad now, but almost like his intentions were good. And so, you know, he hasn't been bad his whole life. Is she kind of able to save him? And is there still some part of him that loves her and wants to be this father figure in her life? And so I found this part of the book a lot more interesting. It doesn't kind of happen though until about halfway through the book. So, but you learn a lot. I mean, you, like, pretty much a lot of, like, most of the quest is her finding out more and more information about him, and then ultimately fighting him at the end. We're left with a big cliffhanger though, so I'm glad that I just finished it, because the fourth book comes out in a couple of weeks. But yeah, we're left with this cliffhanger of, like, wow, really is kind of surprising. I won't necessarily give that away. I will say though, from an adult's perspective, reading this series, it is a middle grade, you know, fantasy series, and I understand that. So the romance in it is, like, pretty non-existent. As I've mentioned before, there is this connection between Aru and Aiden, and I feel like in this third book we saw it a lot more, but it's still not acknowledged, like, at all. And you can even tell that, like, he'll, like, look at her and it's almost like you can feel what he's feeling, but it's like it's not said. And I just want it to be said. I really hope that in the next book, you know, there is some acknowledgement of this connection that they have, and, you know, maybe a little, like, oh hey, like, I don't want you to die kind of thing. I don't know, which I know it's middle grade, whatever, but it's just, it is there, like, it's there a little bit, and I just want more. I just want more of the relationship between Aru and Aiden, and so I do hope that comes in the fourth book. But like I said before, that fourth book is coming out in a couple of weeks. It is called Aru, Shah, and the City of Gold. It is the second to last book in the series, so there's going to be one more book after that. I'm excited for both of them. I have already pre-ordered this fourth book, and I really can't wait to read it. I really want to know what your guys' thoughts are though. So please leave some comments below to tell me, like, if you read this series, what were your thoughts on it? Or if you're someone who's looking to maybe purchase this series for someone in your life and you have any other questions coming from a teacher or a parent's perspective, please feel free to ask those questions as well. And the last but not least, go ahead and subscribe so that when I do finally get the chance to read this fourth book when it comes out and I make a video on the review of that, you're able to follow up with how that fourth book looks compared to the rest of the series. And that's all. So thanks for listening to my video, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.